Hey, what's up guys? Alan with Sonic Electronics, and today we're doing a Q&A that we promised you a little while ago in regards to the new Clarion FDS system, which stands for Full Digital Sound. And we gave you a quick teaser, I don't know if you've seen it or not, where we kind of showed off the equipment. We asked you to give us some questions, so that way we could come back and answer them with a Q&A. So that's what we're here doing today. If you already haven't seen that video, we've went ahead and put that link in the description for you guys to check out. So make sure you check it out if you kind of want to go back and refer to that. If not, we're going to go ahead and start and dive in and start with this Q&A on the Full Digital System by Clarion. It's really cool new technology. If you haven't seen that video, the premises and the foundation of this is all full digital, which is different than the conventional analog systems that are out there. So we're going to answer some of the questions that we got from you guys today. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Our first question that we have is from Mark Evans, and he asks, what does full digital mean? So I'm actually going to pretty much take one of our other viewers' comments. His name is Jules. I'm pretty much going to simply paraphrase what he said because he said it pretty accurately, and it really applies to what we're talking about today. So pretty much he said, in a standard audio system, the source music, your iPod, your iPhone, CD, etc., are all in a digital format, binary code that consists of ones and zeros, but the amplifiers to the speakers work in analog. So basically the signal switches polarity multiple times per second in an AC current system. So your radio has to take the digital sound and turn it into an analog audio output. This process is done by your radio's chip called a DAC, digital analog converter. It depends on the quality of the DAC, of course. So there could be some audio signal loss because of the quality of the DAC. So that's really going to depend on the radio, etc. So even if your DAC was perfect, in a car, you have lots of potential things that you can actually face that can become an issue. One of the biggest things would be noise induction. So it'd be fantastic to have a full digital system where there is no conversion and there's no noise loss whatsoever at all. I'm pretty confident that the system is simply moving the DAC to the amp bolted to the speaker. So Clarion is basically making us believe it's fully digital while it really isn't. Prove me wrong, please. I want to live in a world where it's possible, but I don't see this happening. So Jules, thank you for that. I agree with everything that you said. Of course, obviously, analog is super susceptible to noise issues. And going on to pretty much your closing statement, basically saying that it looks like the DAC, the amplifier, is basically moved on to the back of the speaker. We're going to come back to that in a minute. I'm going to continue on by some information that we were given to more about this question from Clarion, from Mike Fukuda. And I'm going to read a little bit of what he said about the FDS system and what full digital means and kind of how it works. And then we're going to keep moving on to some other questions that we have. So this is from Mike over at Clarion. We use the Clarion receiver with an optical digital output, a single fiber optic cable connected to the Z3's processor's input. From there, thin wiring runs the signal to the tweeters, speakers, and subwoofers. At first we were skeptical. How can power be transferred via digital information only? Where does the digital to analog conversion take place? Here's an explanation. With the traditional system, digital to analog conversion turns the digital signal into analog signals that are boosted by an amplifier to levels that can drive a speaker. With Clarion's full digital sound system, an LSI large-scale integration chip on each speaker uses the digital signal to modulate the 12-volt power supply voltage, which drives speakers, adding the program and the power together. In effect, the DC voltage travels with the digital information along the same wires. The digital signal is combined directly with the voltage by the LSI chip. 6 voice coils on each speaker combine their separate driving energies together, efficiently transforming the electrical signals to mechanical motions that produce sound. Consequently, the system draws very little current, which makes this ideal for vehicles without a lot of extra power for big sound systems. All right, guys, so I know that was a lot of information to take in. Jules had some fantastic words about digital to analog. Of course, he was also a skeptic as well, too, which, we're like I said, we're going to get back to that in a moment. But I'm going to continue on by saying, Mike did a really fantastic job by really explaining kind of in detail how the FDS system actually really works. And I have to be honest with you, I actually spent some time researching this on my own, still being a skeptic as to how this works, because all of a sudden here's Clarion just out of the left field, just coming out with this new technology that's totally different from anything we've ever seen. But I did stumble on is that this technology is actually called D-Note technology. In fact, from what I remember reading, it's actually very much backed by Intel, and they're using it in other industries. Clarion actually happens just to be the first that's offering this and using this technology in the 12-volt world. So earlier, Mike had said that the power and signal get sent through two wires. This is all that comes off the back of the speaker, as you can see here. Just two very thin wires, which is actually really neat. So you're not running power to your amplifier, you're not running remote. This is totally different. So obviously most conventional amplifiers, or pretty much all conventional amplifiers, are gonna need power, ground, remote, RCA signal, and of course they have your outputs. Clearly you can see this operates completely different. So like I said, if you want to look up a little bit of this more on your own, research D-Note technology and multiplexing. Multiplexing, like I said, is the process where it allows you to send both the power and signal through those wires. But we're going to move on. Like I said, I know that was a lot. We got another question from Lobo7486. What's the difference from an original sound system? I'm assuming he's really referring to what's the difference from this to an analog conventional system. And your conventional audio system, you have your aftermarket radio, and within that radio, you have something called a DAC, a digital analog converter. Once that digital to analog conversion happens, the rest of the system, the audio outputs, whether it be the speaker level output or RCA output that you would run to a conventional amplifier, from there all the way to the speaker, it is analog. In this particular type of system that Clarion is offering here, it's a full digital system all the way down from the signal to the speaker. There is no DAC inside the speaker. It actually uses a special technology. It's an LSI chip, large scale integration. I guess you could sit there and say, well, I guess isn't that kind of like a DAC, or is that a fancy word? It clearly isn't. It operates and functions completely different than what a DAC would be. And that's where, if you really stay tuned till the end, Jules was saying, well, what's that on the back of the speaker? We're actually going to open it up so you actually can see what's inside the back of the speaker and how this thing actually works. So that will give you a little bit more information. I guarantee you nobody else is going to show you this. But moving on, what else is different? Well, of course, because in a normal conventional audio system, you have to run power and ground from your battery to the amplifier. In this particular sense, with this system, you do not have to. All you need to do is run power to the processor, which is your DSP. This is your main brain. Another cool thing that's really unique about the Clarion full digital system is it's really designed to work perfectly together. In an analog system, it can be really overwhelming to figure out what speakers should I go with this and what amplifier should I choose. And then of course you have the ability to pick up unwanted noise through cables, etc. Also, your charging system that we all face in car audio can be a big issue because we may not have a big enough alternator, and we need to upgrade the battery. This system doesn't need to actually have any of that. It doesn't really matter. It really actually only requires 1/5 of the amount of power that a conventional audio system would typically need. All right, guys, so those are some of the obvious differences. So we're going to go ahead and move on to a few of the other questions that we have. This one's from Wyatt Jones. Is this different from something like a Rockford Fosgate 360.3? Well, of course, this is a DSP, just like the Rockford Fosgate also is a DSP, but the Rockford 363 is a universal DSP. It does have an optical input, but all of its outputs are analog. That is designed to be universal for an analog audio system. So you would need to choose your amplifier, choose your speakers, and that Rockford 363 will work with that. Of course, it's giving you a full DSP, but it's totally universal. This is not universal. The Z3 processor for the full digital sound from Clarion is 100% proprietary to them. So you're going to be using their tweeters, their speakers, their woofers, with this processor all built into it. It is not an analog processor. The cool thing about it though is it actually does have one analog output that gives you the ability to run both mixed digital signals and analog equipment as well too. So if you're like, you know what, I really like the whole thing about the FDS from Clarion, but I really already have a really nice subwoofer amplifier with like 2 JL 12W7s because I really want some serious bass, maybe a little bit more bass than what the FDS Clarion woofer might offer you depending on what type of system you're setting up. They do give you an analog output that you still can control through the DSP for external amplifiers, so that's really cool. So definitely 363 to this, totally different. Next question is from Ryan Moore. How's the quality versus the price? How does this rank against others like it? It's really hard, Ryan, to really rank this. This is something that's so different and unique. So you can't really say like, well, how do I price these speakers or this woofer versus something else? Since this is designed to work together, it's really difficult to really compare it. I definitely could tell you that I have heard it, not only in a board, but also in one of the vehicles that they had it installed in that we actually brought to our shop here, which is their NSX from the Clarion Builds program. And it was really nice. It sounded really good. Now, keep in mind, this is really designed for somebody that's looking for SQ. This is more of an audiophile setup. If you guys are looking for like SPL and you're looking for just really ridiculously loud, this is really not what that is intended for. This is intended for the guy that wants the newest, latest, and greatest technology, the cream of the crop. He wants something that's going to sound great and be enjoyable. If you're looking for something loud and crazy, well, there's nothing wrong with that as well, but this probably may not be the thing for you. So, you know, there's definitely some big differences overall, so it's really hard to compare price point wise. You definitely can get some really good product out there analog wise, but there's so many challenges that you have to overcome. Whereas with the full digital system, there's less to overcome, really easy to use. Installation is simple, and with the built-in app that you can use on either an Android tablet or an iPad, it makes everything and setting up everything a breeze. It's really, the GUI is really easy to use. You got your full EQ, DSP, time alignment, everything, all your crossover models, everything. It's really sweet. All right, guys, so like I said, it's going to be really difficult to compare. It's not of the same caliber. It's totally different technology, but we're going to move on to the next question because we have a few more to get through before we conclude this Q&A. And that brings us to the username, I am awesome and you're not. He has multiple questions, so we're gonna kind of read through this really quickly, but he basically says, very cool. Is there something that it doesn't do, or is there something that it's lacking? What do you guys wish in testing that it had or it didn't? Is it easy to use? Is there too much to mess with? And would this be a perfect product for a general consumer or more of an audiophile is essentially what he's saying. So there's a few questions there. So now that we've really said a lot of good things about the full digital system, there's one thing that I could definitely say that I noticed, because obviously this is really new. I didn't get to spend tons and tons of time with it, but in my research and getting to mess with it, what I did come across is that you cannot run two sets of components. You have the ability to add a total of 4 mid-ranges, and then of course you can add up to 2 digital woofers. Remember I said you can also use the analog output for analog audio devices. So if you have other woofers or an analog amplifier that you like to use in conjunction, you can. So I thought that was really cool. So it's not completely limiting you. However, having said that, you cannot buy, and it does not support, additional tweeters. So if I had a vehicle with 2 sets of components in the front, components in the back, I don't have the ability to buy another set of tweeters. You can't. There's not enough outputs on this Z3 brain to support additional tweeters. But generally speaking, when it comes to an audiophile standpoint, the biggest thing that you really want to focus on is the front stage. However, you can buy another set of Z7s that you can install in the rear for rear fill if you're concerned about the person in the back. And then you might say, well, there's no tweeter, whatever, I don't want to do that, that's stupid. Well, the Z7 mid-range has a frequency response up to 15K. Now, for most of you, especially the way the human ear works, most people can actually really only hear up to about 17 anyway. Now, maybe you might have the ears of God and you can hear a little higher, but in most tests, most people can't really hear beyond 17, and 15 comes close enough to where the human ear will perceive that as the whole audible range. So it's really not a big deal in my opinion. That would probably be the only thing that I could think of that's really one of those limiting factors if that bothers you. But other than that, I mean, it's really cool. I mean, is this used for the general consumer? Is it more of an audiophile? Yes, like I said earlier, this is more of a audiophile setup here. But that doesn't mean that a general consumer can't use this. In fact, this can actually be quite a lot easier to install because you really aren't running power and ground from the battery like a normal conventional amplifier. You can actually utilize the OEM speaker wire in your vehicle to connect to this and then hook up the other end to the Z3 processor. So it actually can make installation quite easy. Not that an easy installation makes for good sound. It really obviously is going to take, the skills necessary to put this in, just like it would any analog system, and tuning to still make it sound good. But having said tuning, the DSP app that you can use on the tablet, either an Android or iPad, is extremely user-friendly and easy to use, unlike anything that I've ever seen. In fact, all other manufacturers need to make an application like this because it's super intuitive, it's easy to see, and it's easy to figure out. So I really think anybody can use this. This can go in any car, and like I said, because it's 1/5 the power consumption of all other analog audio systems, this will really work in any vehicle. But this may not be the best choice for someone that wants the most loudest SPL system in the world. This definitely would be more for the audiophile, but general consumers can still use this as well. With all these great things being said about full digital, that kind of brings us into our next question from Timothy Hinton. And I can't say the first word, but we'll move on to what he's saying with the rest. He basically saying, really a decent product and no demo, what gives? Well, clearly, I'm sure you guys know, you've seen a lot of YouTube videos. Sure you watch ours. Obviously, you're watching this one now, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of other demos that are out there. Now, with something like this, or any demo in general, it's going to be very difficult for you to really grasp and hear the detail of how this would really sound, or any system would really sound, with a microphone through YouTube. I mean, there's a lot of other things that go into it. I mean, imaging, audio detail, etc. And even if we did have the world's best gear, it simply is a reproduction of a reproduction of a reproduction, and it's not going to be the original file. You simply really would need to be in the vehicle to really hear the detail that this type of system or any audiophile system can really produce. So we're really sorry that we really couldn't show you that. And even if we could, it wouldn't really do this system justice on the quality that you'd really be able to hear in person. But that brings us to our next thing, and we did promise you something that you're going to see that nobody else is going to show you. And that brings us to our next question from Jeffrey. It looks like the speakers are self-amplified. Also, the same thing with the subwoofer. It looks like there is a Molex connector, and the tweeter has a four-conductor lead going to the DSP. I want to see the backside of the tweeter without it being mounted in the housing. Okay, cool. So here is the tweeter on the backside without the housing. It's a dual voice coil tweeter. So it's got 2 coils, where the rest of the speakers have 6 coils like we've talked about. So basically with the tweeter, the LSI chip for the tweeters are built into the Z3 processor. On the mid-range, the LSI chip is built to the mid-range. And on the subwoofer itself, the LSI chip is on the woofer. However, because of the power difference in output, the LSI needs more power on the woofer than it needs on the mid. So the mid actually uses the multiplexing technology, where the actual subwoofer actually uses a separate power source and then sends digital signal. Now, I know you might sit there and go like, oh, well, that sounds like an amplifier. I get why you would say that. But if you consider what the LSI chip does in comparison to what a DAC does from this whole entire Q&A, it definitely is not a normal conventional amplifier. But we're moving on to our last question and our final question. And of course, we're going to leave you with what we've been promising you. We're going to take apart the backside of the Z7 mid-range so you can see it. You're only going to see it here at Sonic Electronics. Nobody else is going to show you this unless you buy it and you show it yourself on your own YouTube channel. So what's the verdict? Should we be throwing out our Morel Elates, Supremos, Ultimos, Dyne Audios, and Hybrid Audio Legatios? Now, of course, I'm going to say, if you've already invested money into top-of-the-line products such as the product I've just mentioned, absolutely do not throw those away. Of course not. You've got a fantastic product. In fact, chances are if you bought some, Morel Elates or Dyne Audios, Legatias, etc., stuff I have used personally before, you probably spent the money and actually bought a really nice amplifier to complement those speakers. So I'm definitely never going to imply throw those out, sell them. This is the best thing since sliced butter or sliced bread. But if you're in the market to put together a new system and you're looking for the newest, latest, and greatest technology, because I sure hope, being in the car audio world, that this technology is something that other manufacturers embrace. Because car audio is really pretty much, for the most part, I hate to use the word stale, but amplifiers have been amplifiers and speakers have been speakers and radios have been radios for a very long time. That doesn't mean that there aren't better speakers or better amplifiers or better radios with better DACs, and you can't have a fantastic system that will win worldwide competitions with SQ or SPL, whatever you're into. But the FDS system from Clarion is absolutely the newest, latest, and greatest. So if you're in the market for a new system, you absolutely, definitely need to spend some time. Check out, remember I said, D-Note technology, multiplexing, and we've already talked about everything else that we possibly could say, good or bad, about the FDS. All right, guys, I know this Q&A was super in-depth. This is probably one of maybe the more in-depth Q&As or longest Q&As that we've actually ever done. But now we're going to go ahead and dive in and do what we've been promising the whole video, and we're going to take apart this Z7 mid-range. All right, guys, so here's our Z7 mid. We're going to go ahead and flip her over. And as you can see, this is actually a pre-production sample. But we're going to go ahead and rip this rubber boot off here. What do you know? There's some Phillips head screws. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and lift the cover off this carefully, because you never know what's underneath. And there's the cover, as you can see. Now, you can see the sticker here, because we're not really exposing much. It says Z7 amp RH. I'm assuming the RH is for right hand, maybe. I don't know. This is a pre-production sample. So even though you can see that it does say amp, this definitely still is clearly not a conventional amplifier. We're going to go ahead and take it a little further apart, just for you. All right, so we got all 4 screws off the circuit board. We're going to go ahead and gently lift this up. I do want to point out one thing that is noticeably different than any other speaker, clearly, is the ribbon cable that appears to be the leads going to the voice coil, because just like we spoke about earlier, this speaker has 6 voice coils. So you actually can see that there's channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are actually indicated on the output section of this board here. But we're going to go ahead and lift it up. And we obviously don't want to damage anything, so we're going to kind of try to flip this over and show you as much as we can. I'm going to assume that this Clarion chip right here in the middle is more than likely the LSI chip. I'm not a scientist, so don't quote me on that, but I'm assuming since they put their name on it, it more than likely is. Hopefully you can see kind of as much as I can see here. Clearly, if you want to call this an amplifier, it doesn't look like much of an amplifier by any means. I would definitely say that this is like nothing else that we've pretty much seen in our industry. Although it is converting digital to analog to some degree, it is not the exact same technology that's used in a conventional DAC. This is an LSI chip that does something completely different, where it looks at the signal coming in from power and signal and converts that, makes that cone movement, and that's the audio that you're going to hear. It definitely is not a DAC. This is something totally different, which is exciting, and you guys should be excited about it too. Car audio needs new products, new game changers like what Clarion is doing here to move forward in our industry so things aren't exactly always the same. So we obviously know that this is not going to be something that someone's just going to be able to copycat. This is going to be something that's, proprietary to Clarion for 12 volts. Like I said earlier, they're using D-Note technology. Super unique. It's super different. It's hard to compare, but we wanted to give you as much information as we know about it. So, and as much information as we could dig up on our own. So like I said earlier, when I said I went ahead and looked into this a little bit on my own, I figured out this is D-Note technology. This is backed by Intel. This is also using multiplexing technology to send signal and power over 2 wires. This is different than anything we have seen in car audio. So I'm going to leave you with that. Like I said, do more research on your own. We've done as much as we can do for you. I believe this video is super insightful and hopefully will answer the majority of your questions. If you have any other questions, like I stated earlier, feel free to give us a call at Sonic Electronics. Any of our friendly sales staff will be happy to answer any question they can. And like I said, this system is for everyone. It's the newest, latest, and greatest technology. I'm Alan with Sonic Electronics. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe so you can see more awesome videos like this. And I'll see you next time.